Hey everybody, so we're going to be opening up the bar today to talk about chapter 310 of My Hero Academia, and it puts the pedal to the metal and slams the gas to the floor. And when I mean that this chapter will ruin anyone who just doesn't read the manga or is behind on the manga or is an anime only, I mean it. This will destroy your entire experience. So if you do not like spoilers, this is not the video for you. Turn back now. But before you leave, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're finally over 20,000 subscribers. And now it's just time to grind to 100,000, right? And if you enjoy coming out to my premieres, be sure to hit that notification bell and become one of my regulars. I see you all in the premiere right now. Thanks for coming out. But now we got tons of spoilery content to talk about. Let's open up the bar, shall we? Alright, welcome to the bar, folks. So we won't spend too much time over here at the bar today because we gotta talk 310 revealing so much, man. I mean, I really wasn't expecting some of these reveals so soon. I thought that we were gonna get some mystique, but that's not it. Horikoshi is going straight up show, don't tell. And with that being said, I think I'll show and don't tell, so let's hit the wall. Alright, so 310 of My Hero Academia starts with a random bystander being caught up in the chaos of society beginning to crumble. She held out too long thinking that the situation would just blow over, but when chaos came right to her doorstep, she made a break for a hero school in hopes that they would provide her with shelter. The thing is, this villain invasion, like the Naruhata Nightmare Night, has civilians on edge. They're acting irrationally and taking things way too far. Ordinary civilians were ready to gang up on this 8-foot-tall fox lady until Deku showed up and thankfully defused everything before someone innocent was hurt or worse, killed. And the last thing that Deku wants is to see the average civilian break bad because of fear. So with that being said, Deku saves the girl and All Might arrives in the Might Mobile to escort her back to a hero school for safety. And before Deku goes out to leave, All Might makes sure our boy is fighting on a full stomach. Forget the fact that he's out in the dead of night like Batman slinking into the shadows, a guy's gotta eat, even if it's fried pork. If I ate that, I'd be on the shitter within 15 minutes. Now, the next part of the chapter is where things start to get super heavy within the story. And for the most part, it lets us feel like there's no room for the kids at UA inside of the story at this moment. Deku is straight up having conversations with Banjo, and Banjo brings up something called the advent of the exceptional. Now let's use some context clues around what he just said. We can say that the advent of the exceptional is probably when quirked individuals start to outweigh those that were quirkless. But not only that, it semi-confirms that quirks may have looked at like they were diseases. So people did all that they could to not reveal that they were quirked individuals. Meaning that in the early days, if you revealed yourself, you could have either attract the ire of All For One or people who were going around hunting people with quirks. And when I think of that, I think of two things. One was how Deku said that prior to society now, the world stumbled into chaos when quirks were thrown into the fold. And two was Destro. When he was born, everybody looked at him like he was some sort of freak with a deformity, but his mom said that he wasn't a freak, he just had a quirk. And before the next scene, we get this beautiful shot of Deku overlooking the city, saying that he needs to use the full power of One For All as he stares out into this city covered in darkness. And I love how Deku is drawn right here because he's drawn with a glowing silhouette like he is the one spark of light within all of this darkness. Though this is when we reach the part of the chapter that is honestly my favorite. We transition to a flashback back into the Singularity. We learn that back in the Singularity, there was more to the conversation between the first, second, and third users of One For All. Additionally, we learn the originator's name, Yoichi. So back in the Singularity, Yoichi gets off his throne and starts talking to the two holdouts while Banjo tells Deku to talk to En and Shinomori and learn a little bit more about their quirks. So while Deku is talking to the others, Yoichi speaks with the third successor first. And we totally knew this, but it's confirmed. All For One was controlling society society before all of this, and not only that, people just worked for All for One and were under his thumb without even realizing it. Because when you're born into a generation of cruelty, or when cruelty is attracted to you for your own existence, people will make compromises to their own ideals. And the third user of One for All more or less speaks for the second user and says that they betrayed All for One because they had their own misgivings about the future. Because my guess is, before they found out about the brothers, something happened that exposed them to the real All for One and what he was doing. And in turn, the second user of One for All turns on All for One. But this is when the second user of One for All speaks up and says that he's hesitant to even help because of all of the bloodshed. So it's not that he thinks that Deku isn't worthy, it's that he's a little bit apprehensive that he might let a boy take over this fight, because back when he was the wielder of One for All, defeat meant death, and he doesn't want that for Deku. The second user of One for All is admitting that he killed a lot of people back then. Fights weren't as simple as the loser gets stuffed into an Iron Maiden and then shipped off to Tartarus, so I can see where the second user of One for All could be apprehensive. I can only imagine how many friends and innocents were murdered right in front of him by All for One, especially if he betrayed him. And betrayal is a pretty good reason to stay vindictive if you're a villain. Though while the first successor laments upon Deku's wishes to save their mortal enemy, Yoichi counters his train of thought with two things. One, when he busted into the room with the third user, why did he choose to save him? Also, I love the parallels that Horikoshi loves to draw. Whether it's Shiggy and Deku or Bakugo and Deku, the spirit of hope in this series is translated through the willingness to meddle in business that is clearly not their own. And the second fact is, Yoichi already knows that they plan on helping out Deku. If they didn't, they wouldn't be here in the Singularity in the first place. Because while One for All is the spirit of rebellion against All for One, it didn't become One for All until the second user reached out his hand to help. This scene is a beautiful sentiment that takes place between the originators of the quirk. The second user of One for All looks pretty damn awesome as well. I can't wait to see what more he has to say, because it looks like the person that's gonna be inside of Deku's head leading the charge is this guy. And my guess is, he rebelled against All for One pretty damn hard. Also, I know it's in English right now, but in Japanese, boy is shonen, and the only other person to call Deku shonen is All Might. So take that as you will. Either way, I am so excited for the next chapter. The stage is being set for something huge, because even when the chapter ends with the second saying that things are going to be moving quicker from here on out, personally, I really hope that Deku gets a speed quirk. We've seen that Deku is already overwhelmingly fast from the get-go because of stockpile, though now we have to start speculating through context what their quirks might possibly be. We see from the second user of One for All that his quirk kinda looks like Bakugo's, where he has a support item on his arm, so for all we know, this guy might have the ability to fire energy blasts or something like that, or maybe he even has an explosion type of quirk as well, which would piss off Bakugo even more. Now, as for the third user of One for All, I've had my sinking suspicions about this guy. I know my boy Vocal Pineapple thinks that he could be Gigantomachia, but I think that he's this guy, the bodyguard to All for One that we saw in previous episodes. There's something about their hairstyles that just makes me think that they're similar, and after finding out that the second and third user of One for All are pretty much betrayers to All for One, there's so much to that situation now, and I absolutely need to see the scene where they just go, wow, this guy has really gone overboard. I think it's time to leave. Especially because the third user of One for All could have possibly been his personal bodyguard, meaning that the third user of One for All could have been the guy that distributed the intel to the Resistance about the brother of All for One. Or they could have just gotten some intel that there was some super secret weapon inside of All for One's base, only to kick open the door and find this frail guy sitting there. I mean, right when the door opens, the second user of One for All kind of gives us the vibe that he was ready to clap anybody that was standing there. And it isn't until they see Yoichi that they're like, oh god, his secret weapon is a hostage. Either way, all revolutions have to start somewhere. Also, no offense to my boy Turtle Quirk here, but I am so happy that 310 deads the Bakugo time travel theory. As much as I respect the grind on that theory, it was so out there, man, and while people were able to formulate pretty solid theories around it, I don't think Horikoshi has plans on implementing time travel anytime soon. Time travel is an ex machina that can destroy your series. Ask any creator of a Flash comic. Because the minute you have your Sound of Thunder moment when someone steps on a butterfly, the whole story gets opened up to parallel universes, and that's something that manga usually doesn't do. There's been a few titles that have handled time travel really well, whether it's Erased or Steins Gate, but Steins Gate is really the one that everyone tends to go to when they talk about time travel. And Steins Gate proved that you can have one series that revolves around the main one with its sequel, but think about time travel in general. It's fickle, and most of the time it can make or break a story. Anywho, look, I'm not falling down a time travel rabbit hole right now. As for this chapter, in general, I really enjoyed this one. I love the direction that the series is heading. Changing on the fly while maintaining readers is a fresh way to give us a new take on an existing series. I know people might not like this take, but My Hero Academia, in my opinion, was getting kind of boring because every arc kind of felt like it was recycled. It was rinse and repeat. Kids go to school, villains attack, villains lose. With the new arc, Horikoshi was able to change the story enough and take the reader on this adventure of change. So while events like the sports festival are a distant memory, we're gonna have to look back on Deku's Vigilante arc in a few years and really praise it as some great writing. And I know some may long for a time when My Hero Academia was simple, but I for one am the type of person that likes when the stakes are risen. When a manga starts out, the stakes are always low. It isn't until you get your Zabuza moment, or in My Hero Academia, the Stain moment, that you realize that they're in this. This is becoming a life or death game for all of these kids. So it's totally normal to get overwhelmed when a series kind of goes off the rails. But I think we all have to have faith in Horikoshi at this point, because he's brought us down and then immediately brought us back up several times. So yeah, I think that 311 is amping up to be a pretty intense chapter. I always love the scenes when heroes discover more about their power, so while I'm hoping that we get more villains for Deku to fight, I'd be ready for some quirk lessons from the second and third. Now, if you have any idea as to what their quirks might be, write them in the comments down below. Also, do you share my sentiment and think that the second and third users of One for All used to be subordinates of All for One? Let me know. And also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button. But until next time, stay out of the rain, be safe, and be good to one another. Cheers.